All right, so some background details about me. Who am I? My name is Akpanoluo. Oftentimes when, people get confused hearing such a long name, so I have basically created a mnemonic. I'm basically channeling Little Richard, and so I'll always sing Akpanoluo, wap bam boom, and then that helps get it into people's brains. Um, by day, I'm a coder. I code doing data engineering, data science stuff. This is just like a simple sample of code that's non-proprietary. Um, and then outside of that, I run the music community, the Soundshop. I've been running it for the last 3 years. And in particular, in the last 2 years, I've gotten really interested in the connection between music and the brain, music and healing, and every single combination of those two. On the one side of things, I'm a huge nerd about music. I love absorbing facts and information and just like, sharing stories as it pertains to music. But there's also something very deeply emotional about it, and spiritual. And I really like that in music, I find something that I'm able to, engage in my most intellectual and most emotional and spiritual. So this picture right here is actually from my first music and healing event, and the guy on guitar, he's a music therapist. So he like really helped introduce me to the field of music therapy. And then in the corner is my brother and I, and we're all singing at the very end of our music and healing event. Um, so a little bit about my music background. No, that is not me. That is my doppelganger, young Miles Davis. Um, and I grew up initially playing piano. My mom put my brother and I on the piano at a very young age. And then fourth grade came around. It was time to pick a band instrument, and I picked up the trombone. Never really looked back to piano. But I'm very appreciative of the early introduction to music. Um, I When I was in college, I continued playing trombone, and I joined a Jewish a cappella group. So that was another incredible experience, and just in terms of like getting exposed to different culture, different religion. This is me performing at the Jewish Museum in Berlin a decade ago. Um, boop. And in college, I studied neuroscience at Yale, um, and yeah, I've been obsessed with the brain pretty much my entire life, and yeah, I decided to just like go really deep into that, and my mom's a painter, so this is actually a painting that I drew while that I did while in college, of a neuron. Um, so there's that continual intersection between like the sciences and the arts in my background, which I think puts me in a very interesting position to be able to talk about these sorts of things. So to dive into the meat of what I'd like to talk to you guys about today, I'm going to start with an inciting incident, and perhaps because I'm not formally an academic, I feel more liberated to just fire some shots. But I definitely have some beef with Steven Pinker. He is a world-renowned linguist and neuroscientist from Harvard. And the thing that grinds my gears so much is something that he said. Couple of things that he said in the late 90s. So he said, compared with language, vision, social reasoning, and physical know-how, music could vanish from our species and the rest of our lifestyle would be virtually unchanged. So I am totally against that. Boo. Feel free to add some booze in the chats to that. um, and the other thing that he said, and this is the thing that I really fixate on because it's like so viscerally visual. But he said, "Music is auditory cheesecake, an exquisite confection crafted to tickle the sensitive spots of at least six of our mental faculties." So there's so many things I have to disagree with that. Music is far more fundamental than cheesecake is, and I basically took those two comments in combination to basically imply that music is just a side dish to language, um, and given that statement, I decided that for this presentation, I wanted to put that thing down, flip it, and reverse it. So take that whole notion of language being sort of like the main dish, as it were, and like music being the side piece, and actually to say music is built on top of music software. So the
Hey,
basic
Aqua.
I
Hey,
yes, hello. Uh-huh.
can you let some of the people in?
Yes, I can.
Thank
And
you.
all thank you.
And do you want to just restate that for?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Language is built on top of music's software. And so when I say that, I speak of the brain metaphorically as though it were a computer. And so if you could think of, music as being like, this like fundamental base layer, kind of like an operating system. And then language is something that is built out of that. So it's just one of the features of music. So yeah, that's my way of sort of like flipping around Steven Pinker's original statement, and I'll sort of get into a couple of points around why I believe that to be the case. So the first thing I'd like to highlight is um, looking at a comparison between language in the brain versus music in the brain. So if we look at language, the primary location of language processing can be found in the left hemisphere, in the temporal lobe. Um, and so that's why in conditions where there are brain injuries that are localized to that specific area, people can end up acquiring aphasia and losing their language capabilities. Um, However, music lights up the whole thing. So here's a picture that I pulled from the internet of the brain at rest on the left and the brain's reaction to music, and we see like activation all over the brain. So yeah, music activates the entire brain, whereas language, although very important, is more restricted in its localization. Um, and that difference between music and language, in terms of where it's being expressed, that creates a conduit for one to use music to regain abilities that they've lost because of brain trauma, and language especially is one of those capabilities that people are able to regain through music therapy. And that's definitely something that Barbara will be able to speak to later when she's telling her story. Definitely something that Kyle can speak to, and I'm sure many of you in the audience can relate to that as well. The third thing is that music enhances language learning. So that's both for a primary language or a secondary language. And there's a lot of research around that. But the specific anecdote that I wanted to give is my name once again. Akpanoluo, a wop bam boom. So there's a very specific reason why I give my name musically. because I'm basically, piggybacking on that full brain activation. So whereas if I just said Akpanoluo, unless you're explicitly tying it on your own to a particular song, it's probably just going to be the language part of your brain firing up, maybe also your facial recognition part of your brain. But as soon as I put that in song form, then we're like getting the full brain activity associated with my name. So for anybody else who has really complicated names, I think going the musical route might be helpful. Um, the other thing I wanted to point out is that other species have music, even though they lack language. And so, I think, if we think of the fact that there's only one species that we know of, humans, that have music and language, and there's lots and lots of different species that have variants of music, it might stand to reason that music is actually built on top of language as opposed to the other way around. And there's lots of different examples of that in the animal kingdom. We have everything from moths, humpback whales, monkeys, birds, all with abilities to either create some form of music or be able to interpret and appreciate music. So it seems to be an ability that is more hardwired to animals more generally. And I think because of the intersection between music and language that I've already established, it would make sense that music was then the foundation upon which language was built. So this is where I sort of get into, like, you know, a little bit of evolutionary biology and a little bit of anthropology. And this is largely speculation on my part, and I literally came up with this theory today. So I'm eager to get people's thoughts on this. But I'm gonna admit one more person. But to sort of get into what I'm sort of thinking in terms of, like, the theory of how music turned into language. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to mention, I don't see my slides, so I kind of like am riffing. But anyway, bird song. There's a lot of bird song where they have infinite combinations of abilities of, like, mixing sounds together. So a lot of bird song actually has capabilities very similar to what we see, what we expect of music in humans, because we also have an infinite capacity to create new music that no one's ever heard before. But yes, now to my working theory of music and language. So if you could imagine our pre-language ancestors, they wouldn't have had language necessarily to coordinate with each other, to forge bonds with each other, to express emotions. But music is able to do a lot of those things. Music's able to forge community. It's expressive. That was supposed to be an emoji. But anyway, we would have this capability of expressing things musically. So, we'd gather together, we'd sing. That might be part of, religious and cultural experiences. And even without words, you'd be able to get that benefit. And so, we'd have these vocalizations without words. And why didn't we have words back then? So what I sort of imagine is that musical capability has basically became, like, very expansive in terms of its ability to be recombined in infinite different ways. But because the level of of infinite combinations is so high, it didn't have, like, specific communication beyond the emotional. And so, like, music is great for conveying emotions, but not so great for conveying explicit meanings, unless, of course, you have words. So what if we take the lack of rules in music and create some clearer ones from that? So, you say that like these specific sounds mean these specific things. These specific sound orders mean these specific things. So then you're getting words, you're getting grammar, and then you make other tweaks that say like, when you're doing this kind of special vocalization, you're only going to keep within a certain pitch. You're not going to be like going all throughout your range, that sort of thing. So you'll lose a little bit of the full emotional expressiveness of music, but you still have this musicality, um, and through that you gain explicit expressiveness. So yeah, like I mentioned, words and grammar, and so you can imagine that kind of like evolving naturally from musical capabilities. But we uh, we have big brains, and we have them for a reason. So I basically speculate that one of the things that happened as we replicated this musical capability and codified it so that it could be explicitly expressive beyond simply emotionally expressive, like our brains were basically like, okay,
Find out what to do with this.
um, oh, who, what? Hold on.
You should be able to hit mute all in the.
Oh yeah, yeah.
No.
True. Okay, mute all. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and Ak, we're just be mindful of time. We're gonna have that pretty soon.
Yep, absolutely. So, yeah, so that's basically my theory of how music evolved into language, and we decided to retain both capabilities, and that's part of why we have to maintain these huge brains of ours. And so, in response to Steven Pinker saying that music is cheesecake, I would like to say I think of it more as a steak, but maybe perhaps a cauliflower steak, because it kind of looks like a brain. Um, and that's it. Thank you so much.